the sister university to the University of Ulster, which was also very good from a Northern Ireland perspective since we were leading that group. Okay. Workforce and workload. This was probably one of the more challenging groups because it's a difficult one. And the focus and the scope of their work included demographics, education commissioning, attrition and workforce planning. And all of those are very hard to do because, with the best will in the world, we can't actually decide how many babies are going to be born every year. That's up to the people who have them. It would be lovely if we could, because it would make life much easier, but we can't. And so we needed to look at the birth projections for 2020, but that's a guesstimate in anybody's language. What will the birth rate be? We've had an increase in birth rate throughout the UK for the last number of years. Statisticians told us that wasn't going to happen, but there you go, it did. We have no idea. Some people will tell you that the birth rate will go down because we're in a recession. Other statisticians will tell you that during a recession the birth rate goes up. So it's a matter of who you believe, and this was probably, to look towards 2020, this was one of the most challenging groups from that point of view. Interesting stuff that came out of it was the number of midwives currently registered and those currently practising. There's approximately 4,000 midwives on the NMC register who don't notify an intention to practice. So, where are those 4,000 midwives and why are they not practising as midwives? So that was a challenge to us as a profession to see, why are these people not practising? Where are they? The age and the working pattern profile of the workforce. Well, in the last 2 years since I've taken up this job, all I've heard about is old midwives. But actually I don't see very many in this room, so we're okay. And I'm not nearly old enough to be in that group, and I keep thinking, I wish sometimes I was. But the age profile, and again, the recession will have an impact on that. I'm already hearing from groups of people that midwives are now asking to increase their hours. They're working a wee bit longer. They're not retiring as early. But again, we can't accurately predict what midwives are going to do. Increasingly recently, we've had an increase in the number of part-time workers. But again, the recession may have an impact on that. And all of that then makes deciding the number of students in training a terribly difficult number to come up with. And it's a challenge that we work at constantly. Certainly in Northern Ireland, we work with service providers, with education providers, to try and come up, because we want to have enough midwives in the system, but we don't want to be training midwives who don't have jobs either. So it's a constant battle to know which way. And attrition rates. Attrition in Northern Ireland is not a huge issue. Attrition in Scotland is absolutely massive issue. So again, there's a little bit of four-country differences around that, but it's hard to know and how we can work on that all together. Okay. The core role of the midwife was another challenging group. It was led by Wales in conjunction with Northern Ireland, there are many people in the room who were involved in this group, and it was challenging. But if you put a whole lot of midwives into a room and ask them what their role is, if it's not challenging, there's something wrong. But it was the most essential group in many ways, and it fed an awful lot of what happened from the other groups. Fiona Alderdice spoke last night about how important the midwives' input into high-risk pregnancies is, as well as into low-risk pregnancies. And this was something that this group was very much trying to find the medium with. What is the core role of the midwife and her role in normality, but also those women with complex needs, either in their pregnancy, in their social life, or in their medical history, who are still just as entitled to, and in fact it's just as important that they receive the care of a midwife. So that raised certain challenges, but we got there, and I think that it really did become one of the most interesting groups throughout it all. We also looked at a variety of models of care, that was also part of what the core role of the midwife group was to look at, and service delivery, and how we deliver the service now and how we may deliver it in the future. And we also needed to look at what models of care are sustainable into the future, both from the woman's perspective, but also from the midwife as a human being's perspective, because we have got, working time directives, although I think the world thinks they only apply to doctors, they actually do apply to everybody. And all of these things will have an impact. Midwives have families, and all of that has an impact on the service design that is sustainable into the future. So that was the 5 groups, and that's sort of what we were tasked to do. And in March of this year, we had to submit our final workstream reports, which was done. And there were 5 reports that were all approximately sort of between 40 and 50 pages each. And a very smart lady called Jill Rogers from Jill Rogers Associates went away and tried to take the key bits out of all of those reports and make them into one report. And that editorial work then occurred over April and into May. And whenever we had that final report, it was then submitted to the programme board and to the 4 CNOs. And we had a UK programme board meeting then in June, where all of the key messages, recommendations, everything that was coming out of the report was discussed and decisions were made. What were the really important things coming out of the 5 work streams that absolutely had to be in the final report? As I said earlier, the stakeholders were involved in this process throughout the whole thing, so we didn't have a public consultation on the document, but we did feel it was important that we got midwives' views of this report. So throughout the summer then we ran a series of engagement events, and there was one here in Northern Ireland where we brought the key messages and just asked people to have a look at the key messages to make sure we hadn't missed anything really drastic, to make sure that we hadn't said something that really didn't sit comfortably with the midwifery population. And they were very successful, and people by and large were very happy with the key messages that were coming through. And as I said then, in September, on the 9th of September, next Thursday, there will be a launch of the publication, and that's happening in Edinburgh because to a certain extent Education Scotland they funded Midwifery 2020, so Scotland had a very big part to play in this, and that's why the event launch is in Edinburgh. However, we're going to have a Northern Ireland launch of the publication on the 14th of October at the joint Royal College of Midwives and Irish Nursing and Midwifery Organisation conference in Armagh, which I'm sure Mary can give you more details on if anybody wants to go. And so all that remains for me to say then is really that from the 9th of September the document will be available to download, probably I would imagine around lunchtime next Thursday, on the Midwifery 2020 website. All 5 workstream reports will also be available on this website. There will be a limited number of copies, of hard copies of Midwifery 2020. It's Midwifery 2020 Delivering Expectations is the byline. There will be a number of copies, hard copies available, and if anybody really wants one, they could contact me and I can probably manage to give one. And I would just encourage you all to read this publication. It is only going to be, it's been condensed into quite a short and sharp document. It's only about 45 pages long, but it is a really essential piece of work for midwifery into the future. I'm not going to be at the party because despite the fact that I did all that work, they arranged it when I'm on my holidays. But I'm not better, I promise. But for those of you, because I know there's a few here who are going to be there, enjoy it and enjoy the document whenever it comes out.